You will fail if you ignore the technology and the cultural trends, and you will fail if you just jump into this, new, we call it in the industry, new shining balls, right? IoT, I gotta have IoT, or the new library, I gotta have it, new tool, I gotta have it, low code, I gotta have it. You just jump, robotic automation, all these technologies, so many technologies.
So I want to know a little bit about your background.
Oh, how back you want to go? So let me. Okay, I'll start with my education. I did my PhD. In fact, I have a master's in mathematics and a master's and PhD in computer science. The computer science is from University of Wisconsin-Madison. And then after that, I joined a company called MCC, Microelectronics Computer Corporation in Texas, which was a research think tank, about 70% or more PhDs from all around the world, the top brains. We would show up to work and say, what can we innovate? And, there were branches in like databases, advanced databases. I did a lot of work there, intelligent databases. I ended up joining after that Ashton Tate. I don't know if you've heard of that name. It was the world's third largest software company at that time. And I invented their intelligent databases, intelligent SQL. I'm sure you've heard of SQL. And I used to be part of the ANSI SQL standardization committee. And then I started getting into document imaging, document management, workflow, did a couple of founding. I was the brain behind another successful company called Savion, which in 2002 was the world's leader in BPM. And I was the, sort of the acting CTO, the brain behind inventing, getting them into the business process management and business process automation. I did some other ventures for a year, and then Pega started having me as a consultant, and then they made me an offer. So, by the way, the MCC was in Texas. I moved to Northern California, Silicon Valley, did some ventures, and then moved to Boston. And I was with Pega with quite a few years, like 16 years or more. And I was the vice president of BPM technology and chief evangelist. I'm the author of 10 books, hundreds of articles. I have a TEDx talk. My latest book, I'm sure that's what we're interviewing, is really accumulated, although I kept it small, of this whole vision of digital transformation, especially the cultural transformation. My TEDx talk was on culture, by the way, that companies are undergoing. I've interacted with many CIOs, IT managers, business leaders. I'm recognized in both in the intelligent database and the intelligent business process management world, which are like data and processes, like data and the programming language. So like two sides of the same coin, but this bringing to the business very much into blockchain, IoT, design thinking. I mean, the book covers it all in a very palatable way. And I've established Khosh Consulting, which really focuses on the content of the book. I'm also teaching in November 15 for professionals, a one-day course on Digital Transformation 101. That is with an organization called BPM Institute. I'm an instructor there. I've been also a professor, by the way, for 20 years in different universities, as well as the Biz Institute. So these are the two organizations. They've been around for decades. And they focus on business process management. And now I'm offering this course. This is a new course for them. It's all based on the book. So that's very briefly on myself.
You're a busy guy. That's a lot of stuff. Congratulations. No, I'm curious. You said you were at Pega Systems. Is that correct?
Yeah, I was for the past like 18 months more. It's been
Did you know Don? Did you know Don over there?
Don Sherman?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. Yeah,
sure. Oh, he's awesome. He's been on the show.
Oh,
I got to
okay.
meet him. I got to meet him a few years ago when we did an interview, and certain people stand out to me. And so when I saw Pegasystems, I was like, I really enjoyed that interview. I really enjoyed Don. It sounds like that company had a really great culture.
Yeah, yeah, very good. Cutting edge, Cambridge, not so much Silicon Valley, but the Cambridge Casa, which itself has a mini Silicon Valley in the East Coast. So yeah, they're very much innovation. I've done a lot of innovations at Pega, not only meeting the needs of transformation through process automation, but pushing the company into areas such as Internet of Things and blockchain, which are, as well as artificial intelligence, all the design thinking, all this. I've been also innovating on centers of excellence, competency center. How do you balance innovation IT, fast IT with maintenance IT? I'm an expert in that. And I have a few slides, by the way, as I said to your colleague, I'm a very visual person. I know this is primarily audio, but I'll share and I'll make sure if somebody just listening to the audio, they won't get lost.
All right. Yeah. And if you're listening, you can go watch on YouTube as well. We'll put this on our YouTube channel so people can see it. All right. So when I got your son reached out to us, right?
Yes.
I was like, first of all, I was like, that's cool. And he's like, hey, you should have my dad on the podcast. And he sent us like your bio. And so I clicked your TED talk and I was like, oh, he can speak. That's cool. That's like one of our first qualifiers. We try to hunt down videos of guests before we have them on to make sure. And then also people that put out content tend to have a lot of information about themselves online, which makes the interview easier, right? So like the security people are some of the hardest people in the world to interview because they wipe the internet of any mention of them. And but one of the things that caught my eye after I watched TED Talk, I saw you had a book, and then you used some words in an interesting way I hadn't used them before. I'm super familiar with technical debt, right? But you kind of like put something adjacent to that, and you're calling it digital transformation debt. And I wanted you to explain that to me.
Oh, that's excellent. Yeah, I love it because if you look at technical debt, what's the premise, right? And that is so common. So let me start with that and take you to digital transformation, just in case your audience, although they can search. And you're right, I introduced the term digital transformation debt, but I'll get into it. And I wrote a whole book about it. So that's why we're here. Yeah, it's like, getting things done, without paying the piper, so as to say, paying the price, do it quickly. I don't have time for this. So let's just, there are technological trends, methodology trends, there are cultural transformative trends. So the main premise of technical debt is, I'm going to postpone. I know I have, okay, let's take I'm going to get a little bit technical. And if I'm getting too much, Joel, please let me know. One of the areas, in fact, I wrote a book about it, that I get very deep into is object orientation. As you know, it was a key paradigm for many, many years, still is. If you look at some of the popular languages, Java, C#, C++, even, it's creeping into JavaScript and many other languages, modern languages as well. Well, if you look at that, there is sometimes, I'm going to just give you one example, you sometimes realize that your class structure or the overall structure of your code has problems. And you keep on postponing it and patching. Right? I'm just giving you one example. I keep on postponing and patching. That could happen in other programming paradigms as well, like structured programming, like C, which is still popular. And you keep on postponing. You have to do it right, and you keep on postponing it. Well, you're accumulating debt. So that's the notion of technical. Or there is a new technological trends which allows you to do things much easier, much simpler. But you say, I'm too busy. I have all this code I need to maintain. We use this example. It's from sales. It's really cute. So these guys have a cart and they have square wheels and they're really trying to push this cart. And somebody comes and says, I have this round wheel I want to sell you. And they say, no, we know how to do this. We're too busy. Go away. We're not interested in round wheel. It makes their life much easier, but they are stuck with the way they've been doing it and they keep on postponing. The debt accumulates. Now, that's high level what people mean, and you can check it. There are different opinions, etc., in terms of technical debt. Well, let's come to digital transformation debt. The world, I mean, this is not some catchy marketing term, but the world is really changing. And it's changing not only in terms of the explosion of technology. So digital transformation debt, each of the words has a lot of meaning, a lot of semantics. There are connotations, some explicit, some hidden connotations. One of them, of course, is the digital, that the digital world is changing everything from digitized business logic through artificial intelligence, which is, I mean, the one term you might hear is the data-centric organization, with exploding zetas and petas. I lost track how many zeros there are, right? And how fast we're generating data, right? And also connected devices, exploding. Internet of Things, connected homes. I give this example, Joel. So Best Buy, and there are other, stores. Remember, you go back 5 years, even 10 years, how much was the shelf space for Internet of consumer things, right? Connected homes. Very little in the beginning, right? Now go there. And you turn all around. It's all about the connected home, right? And the same thing in manufacturing, the same thing in healthcare. Telehealth experimented an explosion during the COVID-19, and it continues. So the digital is very important. I'm just touching upon it. But then there's the transformation, which, in my opinion, is even more important. People are not realizing that the culture, that's where the transformation comes in, is changing. And what are the trends in this change? The younger generation, Gen Z, Gen X, they're much more innovative. They want to be independent. They want to be entrepreneurs. So that cultural change, there's so many dimensions. Of course, virtualization, you can see big companies on the bandwagon, right? With Facebook renaming itself Meta, Microsoft Mesh, which is also interesting, by the way. They're all getting into this bandwagon. But that's only part of it, the virtualization. It also has to do with flattening the organization, the entrepreneurial spirit. People sometimes don't realize that, when we talk about flattening organization, entrepreneurship, decentralization, connectivity, yes, there are technologies, but there are also cultural trends. And one very important aspect of that is something which, there's even an organization for it, and that's servant leadership. With the servant leadership, that it has to come right from the top, right? Look at, I always give the example. I bring pictures of org charts, right? The hierarchy, the top leader, and the next level, and the next level, and the next level. And you have, what is happening with the busy bees, right? The people who are really actually doing the work, and the top layers. Often there is a very serious disconnect. In their board meetings, they might think everything is rosy. In reality, it's very, very different. That organization, the org chart, is being challenged by decentralization, and it needs servant leaders. Servant leaders it's the exact opposite of what you have in, for lack of a better name, dictatorial, top-down type of leadership, controlling leadership, right? You do our bidding. I only surround myself with people who agree with me. I mean, the stuff, right? This is tradition. And the younger generation, there's almost like a implicit silent revolution happening against this. And there are certain areas we can get into it, especially the low code, no code, and the blockchain area where this is completely exploding. And what about the debt? The debt is that if you ignore this, and that's why I tried in the book to be holistic without, I recommend people to get the ebook or Nook version. It's also on Google as well as the printed, because in the ebook version, I made sure you can click on the links if you want to go deeper. But the book is very easy to read. I try to make it holistic. And the depth is you cannot ignore. So I start with culture, and I end up with competency center, and we can go over some of the content if you like, Joel. But the depth is so critical, and every company should ask, how can I disrupt myself? Because if you don't ask that question, you will be disrupted. The world is changing in almost every domain. So that's my brief answer, Joel. I covered it a little bit in more detail than maybe you expected, but that's sort of a picture of culture is very important for the debt, the technologies, the innovation, the methodologies, and the competency center basically, which balances maintenance with innovation. If you don't mind, and I'll explain it, to the audience. I like to share something, and because I'm a very visual person, and this sort of is very important. So MVP stands for minimal viable product. If you're just listening to the audio, it's something which illustrates almost like a tug of war between the need to innovate.
Well, actually, can I interrupt you here?
Please.
Because you're doing a lot of good stuff, and then you just you're moving on too fast. Okay, so because I've got questions, like you're smart, and this is interesting for me. We were talking about digital transformation debt, right? So, has there been a way to measure it in the sense that, like, if we look at technical debt, right, we can say, people will often log while they're writing code, like that they're accumulating technical debt, and you can actually, some people have come up with ways you could go try to visualize it or see how much technical debt you're accumulating. Obviously it's an abstract thing. And so at first everyone was just accumulating it. Then people started trying to figure out ways to measure it. Have you come up with any ways to measure this digital transformation debt? That's my first question. My second question is, and I'm just going to make a statement. You can correct me if I'm wrong. So I'm trying to better understand this. That next generation that's coming up, can I accumulate digital transformation debt by ignoring those trends? Is that one of the ways to accumulate it?
Yes. I mean, let me touch upon both of these. And I'm going to make it very real for you and very practical. I'm going to take one of the areas that is in the book, and which is one of the most important trends in digital transformation debt. And so let's go to your first question. Can you measure it? Yes. And there have been some independent study. The area I want to pick is low code, no code. Okay. And there have been studies which, so imagine in the traditional technical debt, you might be staying in the confines of your IDEs and the programming languages. And so you're primarily thinking, how can I do this better? More libraries, refactoring the class structure, etc. It's technical. Writing better code in your environments. In the digital transformation debt, number one, you're saying, okay, I'm going to move to a completely different paradigm, the low code, especially the no code paradigm. And people have measured that. Like for the same problem, They've said, give me your best in your traditional languages and your best in the low code, no code, and you see productivity gains and explosion through like minimum viable products much faster, sometimes in days, etc. And they've been objectively measured, and I have references of this in my book. So that's one area. I mean, you can take any of the areas. It's a great question because you want to measure, you just don't want to philosophize. But there is another aspect that sort of touches upon your second question. You can still keep your structure, your organization, and say, okay, instead of me doing, like Java or C# or C++, I'm going to move to one of the modern no-code, low-code platforms. And, and then you keep everything the same. And still, business is communicating with IT. These are the problems we like to solve, etc. Well, here is where the transformation comes. This which is where it touches upon your question. What about you say, okay, I'm going to take I have servant leaders. I want to take things further. I want to empower citizens to do development. Who is a citizen? Well, here we are. We're introducing yet another term. What is citizen developer? I tell you who is the citizen. You and me, we are citizens. Subject matter experts are citizens. Engineers, doctors, nurses, in any domain, they're citizens. Business experts, lawyers, they're all citizens. This is crazy. I mean, now they're building applications. Well, don't they use PowerPoint? Don't they use Excel spreadsheets? Don't they use Word? Or other productivity tools? Yes, they do. So especially with the newer, so it goes to the newer generation, who is not afraid of technology. Why don't we transform our organizations and empower them? Yes, you still need the partnership with IT for security, reliability, cloud architecture, etc. I understand that. You got to have Kubernetes, right? You at least, you got to mention it a couple of times. Why don't we empower them, since they know what they want, how to optimize the customer experience, etc., to become developers? So
because it's scary. It's scary. We don't know how to police it. We don't know the frameworks to manage it. It's like if we just let them start doing whatever they want with the data, we're going to end up with a bunch of like rat's nest of data. Like what's going to happen? And so, I mean, when you said afraid, I was like, oh, I haven't thought of it that way, but that makes perfect sense because people are afraid of new things they don't understand. And so when you get this whole generation that they're born, like my kids, I've got a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old, they just came into this universe where these magical screens existed that can search anything. And so like, they don't even think twice about it. They use it as an appendage, essentially. It's just like, there's a tool and let's use it. But you're right. Like I've constantly, I've heard, because I'm like 34, 33, 34. So like I see the spectrum, right? And I find that there is a certain mindset, and you can't predict it directly off of age because there's so many different people with so many different mindsets. But I'd say like people over the age of 30 are more likely to be scared of the technology than people under the age of 30 as of today.
Spot on, Joel. And the illustration I was giving, I told you the book starts with culture, right? The vision, servant leadership, flattening organization, decentralization, virtualization, the meta world, all of these. But then it ends with competency center. And that's so important. What you're saying is critical. You're right. I mean, I give you areas. I mean, I'm an expert in process automation. If you create robotic process, which are like software robots, and you just keep on multiplying. I heard of a case the other day. They started having a lot of robots, but then they're spending more time building these robots. I mean, they didn't gain anything and maintaining these robots than the productivity you get from the robots. So technology without competency center and the empowerment and the financing of the competency center, which has the charter to balance innovation with best practices. If you don't do that, you will fail. You will fail if you ignore the technology and the cultural trends, and you will fail if you just jump into this, new, we call it in the industry, new shining balls, right? IoT, I gotta have IoT, or the new library, I gotta have it, the new tool, I gotta have it, low code, I gotta have it. You just jump, robotic automation, all these technologies, so many technologies, blockchain is the same, etc. If you just run after those without balancing it with best practices and having a structure that is empowered and financed, everything from your design thinking methodology, which is a very well-defined approach, empathizing with the customer, etc., and all the iteration, agile methodology, continuous improvement and innovation. If you don't have the governance of that and enabling your organization, training them, governing them, and empowering them, and then seeing, failing fast and succeeding faster, all those mantras, there needs to be an organization that keeps the balance. So the answer is, you're absolutely right. You start with culture, you look at all these digital technologies and methodologies and transformation, but then the book ends with competency center. That's where you succeed, and that's very important.
I like it. It's funny because, while let's say a person generation or two ahead of me would be scared of technology, and I'm sitting over here like, oh, you're scared of technology? You shouldn't be. But I'm scared of giving them like RPA type tools and what they're going to, and then the next generation is going to grow up in that world. And they're like, what? You're scared of that? You're scared of empowering these people? And it's kind of funny how that works, right?
Yep. Yep.
I want to know what value streams are. What
are value streams? That's great. And it's more pervasive than one would realize. So part of the problem, and now we're going into that world, is that there are many terms which have very close semantics. And I might differ from other colleagues, and I'm a thought leader myself, and I take these synonymously. For me, it's a value stream is and another term, by the way, and I will highlight this because I want to mention something very important, is value chain. I use value stream and value chain synonymously, okay? It has a beginning, it has an end, right? It's a stream. It has a beginning and it has an end. Think of a stream as a source, and it ends up in the ocean. That's a stream. And in between, it goes through many things. One way to think about it is it goes through states, right? I applied for an account, and then the next step is my background is checking if I'm in bad people list. Let's say it's a bank. And then the account is made available, and I send the email or the text of where the account is, and then I have to go and establish my password and my ID and the 2FA, etc. It's a stream. You do that stream, your account is open, you can use it. That's the simplest example. And we do this almost on a daily basis, right? Everywhere. So it's a stream. Some of it is automatic. Some of it might need humans to approve, right? It might take a few days. There are clearing. It might talk to my systems of record in the back, might even talk to third parties via APIs, all this good stuff. But it has a beginning and an end. And here's the thing. And it provides value. In this case, my account is open. That provides a lot of value for me and a lot of value for example, the financial organization. And if you look at any organization, it's really an aggregate of value streams or value chains. Other terms, process, workflow, take them as synonyms. Beginning, end, right? And then orchestration of a lot of activities and tasks. And usually you also, if you're in continuous improvement, you might have upper limits, lower limits. You want to avoid waste. There you go into Six Sigma and Lean types of principles. I said, I also like value chain for the following reason. A stream or a chain, a value chain, and this is so important. If your listeners forget most of what we're saying, please remember this. Your organization is a collection of value streams or value chains. And each one of these is as strong as the weakest link. Let me repeat that. A string or a chain, a stream or a chain is as strong as the weakest link. What does that mean? And how does this deal with digital transformation? One word I haven't used so far, which is so important, is silo. Silo. If you look at inefficiencies within an organization, let alone between organizations, you immediately run into silo problem. That is, we experience this all the time. You call in or you access the web, maybe there is a bot there helping you, and then they cannot solve your problem. They have to escalate it. You gave the credentials. You have to give the credentials again. I've had it happen to me several times. Every time, give the credit. That's an example of a siloed organization, right? And there's so many examples. There are organizations which are selling on different channels, and the price, it depends on the channel you go to, right? Whether you're calling them or the web, because they're siloed. They've used different applications. There's so many examples of siloed. They didn't know your address was not updated. All these, you didn't get, you had a dispute, you didn't get compensated for it, etc. These are all examples of silos. The organization, why? Because we encourage it. Go back to that org chart. We reward people to stay in their silos. A value stream or a value chain goes across the organization. But think about it, Joel. It goes across the organization. A process goes across the organization. You start one place, you might get legal involved, financial involved, IT involved. Each one of them has their kingdom, and they love their kingdom. And they have their own people, and they're in their silos. So here is why transformation is so important. An organization is an aggregate of value streams or value chains, processes, workflows, whatever you want to call them. Yet the organization is hierarchical, right? So the business, what they do is goes across. How they've organized themselves is hierarchical. That's the problem. That's why decentralization and servant leaderships are so important. So,
can you have a horizontal hierarchy?
Well, okay, great question. So how are you going to have, that's why flattening is very important. And people are experimenting with alternative organizational structure. In fact, if you think about it, blockchain with the decentralized autonomous organization, I mean, Vitalik Buterin has a semi-official white paper on this. I advise people to check it. And I touch upon it, and I have other material. I touch upon it in the book. It's very much dealing with this. I'll give you one example, Joel, where we are paying an enormous price as individuals, as businesses, as countries, and that's supply chain. I mean, think about it. We talked about silos within an organization. So think about intra-silos. Now think about silos between organizations, even between countries and continents, right? It's much worse, and we're seeing that. I mean, what you're seeing and in a sense, an organization even, their value streams are little supply chains within the organization. They're customers of each other. And supply chain usually involves multiple tiers. It's not just one tier. And anytime you have a weakness, why are we seeing this? It might be a weakness in transportation. You see, this is exactly the example of a chain is as strong as the weakest link. What is happening between organizations and countries or businesses, it's happening within organizations. So the decentralized autonomous organization, still we're at the infancy. We need to pay attention. I believe the transformation, every company should think about doing a DAO themselves, flattening their organization, empowering their people, bringing up the innovation in them, especially the younger generation, and creating a very innovative center of excellence. That's the short answer to that. It's difficult.
All right, I like it. But, and you know what? You touched on something that I really got passionate about this, like in my own thoughts, right? When COVID happened and we started looking at where like how centralized everything was. And meanwhile, we're growing up in an age where everything's becoming decentralized in technology. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, man, they can't see that these cost benefits of centralizing the supply chain. I'm sure there's some cost savings, but it's far outweighed by the cost of a central failure, because the cost of a central failure is catastrophic. But if you decentralize it, it just costs a little bit more. Yeah, that's, yeah, I don't know. It blew my mind to think of all the things that we rely. Are you in the United States or no?
Yes, United States.
Yeah, so you're currently living in the United States, and to think about how dependent we are on like the most common medications that are produced. We don't even have a facility here that can produce them. And well, I know that a lot of that's changing through startups and through government funding and whatnot. And that's one thing where like I'd be glad to spend money. Like, where's that bill? Like, okay, we get it. Yeah, there's a lot of things that we need to work on as a society, but where's the bill to be like, hey, so we're gonna build these facilities, so if something happens, we don't all die.
Yeah, absolutely. You touch on medication is one, chips is another, right? Yeah, food. There are studies which show that and I might be conservative, 30% of food is spoiled. I mean, we have countries. Go ahead.
I think it's way more than that. Like I watched some documentary a few years ago, and they showed like it was on the waste in Las Vegas because they like waste so much food. And then they started working with like some farms, but even when they take the excess food and work with the farms, there's still like a massive amount of waste.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's this is a big problem. We will face supply chain challenges for years. It might even be decades. But the good news is the infrastructure, especially through blockchain. I mean, people, I'm sure, I keep on coming to that because it's there is something called Web3, right? And I touch upon this. This is very important. So we're still very much in the Web2 world, right? And we're conducting e-commerce over the web. Web3 is going to be different. And there are different angles where people have approached Web3. One of them is the semantic net, which really did not happen, but still it's implicit in it. Ontologies and really the meaning of the connectivity, this hypermedia connectivity, more semantics with AI and other knowledge models. But there are other components, and one of the components is in the infrastructure is a blockchain, which is really, distributed ledger, which is replicated, etc. But then as you go higher, you get into areas like augmented reality and virtual reality, which the many large companies like Facebook and Microsoft are coming at it top down. They need to, the architecture structure has to change. With blockchain in the bottom, you have AR, VR, and the interactions at a higher level. The world is moving in that direction, but very, very slow. So if blockchain becomes, and there are examples, including in food, where you can leverage blockchain for supply chain, it's ideal. It's made for that, because you can have all these third parties go and find out where things are. It doesn't necessarily mean it solves it, but at least you are aware. Many times today, we're not aware. Believe me, there are people who are using paper and signature, and it's like you have very advanced countries, and then you might pass through ports and other places. We've seen There's so many examples you can search, like some ship can close the Suez Canal. What happens? And there are people who are in a port. I'm just going to give an example who don't want to be vaccinated and they're not working. So what happens there? And you keep accumulating boats. I mean, and you might have very advanced countries with a lot of automation, but the value chain is not healthy. It's like a river coming down and there are these narrow paths and it's choking everything. So that has to be decluttered, that has to be solved. And of course, it's not an all-in-all answer, but if we start moving, it's almost like a maturity model towards decentralizing our world. Our companies, our governments, everything has to be decentralized, and then we permeate this decentralized autonomous organization involving different parties. That is down the pipe, so as to say, but it's an inevitable trend.
So I'm glad that you mentioned the port thing, because my father-in-law has been a UPS driver for 30 years. He drives the semi trucks, right? And so we were all talking about this. And did you know that at the ports, like there are countries that have like fully autonomous ports, or they're very close to fully autonomous ports. And then ours in America are like ridiculously manual because the unions that protect the workers' jobs don't let the new technology come in. I was like blown away by that. I was like, that's not very American. Like we need, that's the recipe to fall behind.
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah. That's so important. Yeah.
You said something earlier when when you were talking about like flattening the organization. That's a hard sell, right? But I was thinking like an easier sell would be like extract a value chain out of the organization and then have a flattened value chain with like one specific thing so you could get used to it and have experience with it. Because asking a company that's older or old enough to have a decent hierarchy to just flatten, they can't do that overnight.
Absolutely. Yes. And I like what you're saying. And the way I put that, and I've done workshops, is to think big, think digital, but start small. So what you're touching upon is start small. Find the value stream or value chain with the greatest value, but not too difficult. So that's another thing I've seen, Joel, that people get excited about the technology and the vision, and they bite more than they can chew. An example of that is many of the SOA, service-oriented architecture initiatives failed, right? By the way, a lot of digital transformation initiatives fail. Probably majority fail because they're not willing, they're not willing to change. B, they are willing to change, but they want to change everything suddenly. It doesn't work that way. So your point is very well taken.
I want to get your thoughts on, and you might not study this area, but recently I've got some people I follow online and they started talking about NFTs, and I was like, okay. And so I Googled what it was and I was like, got it. I understand. And then I started seeing them make like a lot of money with NFTs. And I was like, I was dismissive of it. I was like, okay. But then I thought, like, I was talking with my wife this morning actually about it. And I said, you know what? I think it's equally as crazy that people will pay $20 million for a painting. Like, cause my brain just doesn't process it because I am not that market, right? I'm utilitarian. Like I need to be able to use it. So the idea that like you could use this NFT technology to just do that with any object, I mean, it doesn't sound that crazy.
Yeah, not at all. I mean, I'm not an expert. I dabble with it. In fact, one of my sons is an expert in it. His name is Shahan. He has a very exciting podcast, On with Shahan, and I've done an interview on my book on it. And he has interviews with a lot of the blockchain and cryptocurrency leaders. You're absolutely right. I mean, you spot on in terms of, but it's in a digital world, and in NFT is a bit richer than that. because you have a lot of flexibility. You can have it's first of all non-fungible. It's a unique asset, if you like. So it's not, and you have the ownership and the proof of that. But then you can also associate that with the physical, like a painting. You can have the digital and the original ownership of that digital, as well as the physical, if you like to. So there are many flexibilities. It's a new way of creating value. My son was telling me about these monkeys, images of monkeys, and the new model that when you own these, and then they use the monkey in, for example, an ad or a movie, etc., you get royalties on that, which is a very different way of, it's revolutionizing the way we store value, we share value, we exchange value, and we create wealth. It sort of dovetails from the blockchain and the cryptocurrency world, which I like to call better Web3, really. We have to think about this, otherwise it becomes strange. So think about this. The NFT is an application of it, because underneath you have blockchain technology. Web3 is the new architectural paradigm, and it's in its infancy. It's just starting. And although, there are a lot of tools, you have a lot of material about it. And as I said, many of the big companies are coming at it from the more exciting augmented reality, virtual reality world, immersive sort of the meta world. But really underneath, to make this all work, you need blockchain, and NFT is a very exciting application of that.
How we're coming up on time here, so I'm very curious. How do you make money?
Are you talking for me?
Yeah, you've got books. Do you primarily make your money from speaking gigs, workshops, consulting? Just you're selling your books. How do you make money?
Yeah, so at this stage in my career, total transparency, I don't need to. I don't need, and it's more like I like it. Yes, I do consulting. Book, probably it will cost me more than, and I'm teaching these courses, but that's not why I do it, and which is very important. And also I have other channels, I have investments and so on, including in cryptocurrency. But that's, money is important, but it should not be the motivation. I like to do, I immensely enjoy this. You can call me anytime, I like to have fun. Life is too short, and enjoy. And I realize people have to make money, but that's important. It's important to have a more holistic approach. Life is not just about work and money. I know a lot of people who have money and they're miserable. It's like, that's not the measure. I like to have fun. So for me, it's almost like not even an issue, but I do understand. And I'm available. I like to help organizations in this transformative. It's almost like I've been working. You heard my TEDx talk. I touched upon culture in the TEDx talk, and I've been doing this for several years. And in many ways, business process automation is really cultural change. It touches upon. We have so much waste, Joel. It's painful. The amount of waste that exists in companies, in government, and especially the poorer people are paying enormous price for that, because people are inefficient. So that motivates me. Anything that improves efficiency, operational excellence, that's another term of it. It touches upon Lean and Six Sigma. That motivates me. So short term, yes, I do consulting, I do teaching, but I choose what I want to consult, who I want to consult, and I have other investments, and I've done well, so I don't really need to worry about that.
Excellent. Yeah. So people should buy the book. It's Digital Transformation Debt. Is that the name of the book?
Yes. How to Alleviate Digital Transformation Debt, especially post-COVID-19, because the world has changed.